So this is it? 5 years and you're not even going to fight for us? His voice cracked with disbelief as I calmly packed my suitcase. Everyone expected me to break down, to plead for another chance like all the times before. Instead, I felt this strange electricity coursing through me, a shocking clarity I'd never experienced. The man who had conditioned me to believe I was nothing without him was about to discover I had already left him behind in my mind, long before I started packing my bags. It started with our 7th breakup in 18 months. Thoreau had been distant for days, treating my texts like inconveniences, canceling our anniversary dinner with a 3-word message. Something came up. When I finally confronted him at his luxury downtown loft, his reaction was predictably explosive. "I can't do this anymore, Valeria. I need space. We should take a break, maybe permanently this time." The words that once would have devastated me now just hung in the air between us, oddly weightless. I stood there in his minimalist living room, designer furniture that I'd helped select surrounding us, waiting for the familiar tsunami of panic to hit, that desperate, clawing need to fix things, to apologize even when I'd done nothing wrong. 5 years together, and our script was so well rehearsed I could recite it in my sleep. My tears, my begging, his cold distance, the agonizing days of silence, and then finally, his gracious forgiveness, as if he were bestowing the greatest gift by allowing me back into his life. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the message from my former mentor Zora that had flashed on my phone earlier. That position in Singapore still needs your answer. Last chance to say yes. The dream job I declined twice already because Thoreau had convinced me international relocation would destroy what we had. "Fine," I said simply, my tone so neutral it startled both of us. "If that's what you want." His expression morphed from controlled anger to genuine confusion, eyebrows knitting together above steel blue eyes. "That's it? You're not going to fight for us? For everything we've built?" I picked up my designer bag, the one he'd selected, claiming my taste was too eclectic, and my car keys. "I think I'm done fighting, Thoreau." As I walked to my car, the night air unseasonably cool against my skin, I kept waiting for him to call after me, to stop me. He didn't. Even more surprisingly, I didn't look back. Not once. At my apartment, I kicked off the uncomfortable heels he preferred me in and poured a glass of Cabernet I'd hidden because he only approved of Chardonnay. I expected tears to come, prepared for the crushing weight of abandonment. Instead, I found myself scrolling through my emails, locating that job offer, wondering if I could still accept it. For the first time in 5 years, I was thinking about what I wanted, not calculating what would appease Thoreau and keep him from leaving. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes. I'd cried after all, but not for the reasons anyone would expect. These weren't tears of desperation. They were tears of revelation. 5 years of my life spent walking on eggshells, measuring my worth by Thoreau's approval. My phone buzzed. "Zora. Did you email them back yet?" I hadn't. My finger had hovered over the reply button for hours before I finally fell asleep. Part of me still expected Thoreau to call, to follow our usual script. His cooling off period, my desperate apologies, our tearful reunion. "I'm going to my spot," I texted Zora instead. My spot was this hidden waterfront cafe where I always went after our breakups. I'd sit there for hours, drafting apologetic texts, rehearsing what I'd say when I showed up at his door with imported whiskey and his favorite takeout from that exclusive restaurant that didn't even do to-go orders until I'd begged them. The staff knew me so well they'd have a lavender latte ready before I even ordered. As I pulled into the parking lot, something shifted inside me. I didn't want my usual table by the window where I could stare dramatically at the water, composing poetic texts Thoreau would read but never acknowledge. I didn't want to craft messages he wouldn't appreciate anyway. Instead, I sat at the counter and ordered something I'd never tried before. Their signature breakfast hash with chimichurri. "No lavender latte today?" the barista asked, clearly surprised. "Black coffee, please. And could I get the Wi-Fi password?" I spent the next hour polishing my resume instead of an apology text. When my phone buzzed with a message from Thoreau, "We need to talk," I felt that familiar gravitational pull. 3 words that usually sent me racing back to him. But the resume on my screen represented something new, a different path. I finished my breakfast, which turned out to be spectacular, and stepped outside. The harbor breeze felt crisp against my face. Normally, I'd be planning my route to Thoreau's loft, stopping for his favorite artisanal chocolates and specialty coffee beans along the way. Instead, I called Zora. "Can you look over my resume? I'm emailing Singapore today." There was a pause, then a shocked laugh. "Who is this and what have you done with Valeria?" "I think she's finally waking up," I said, surprising myself with a genuine smile. That afternoon, instead of lurking near Thoreau's building pretending to bump into him, accidentally, I hit send on my application and went rock climbing, a passion I'd abandoned after Thoreau complained it made my hands too rough when I touched him. 3 days passed. According to our usual pattern, this was when I'd be standing outside Thoreau's door with tear-stained cheeks and a practiced speech. By now, he'd be expecting it, waiting for it even. The thought of him sitting there checking his phone, wondering why I hadn't called yet, gave me an unexpected surge of power. My phone had been surprisingly quiet. Just a few texts from mutual friends asking if we were taking another break. I didn't bother explaining that this time felt different. They wouldn't believe me anyway. I'd claimed that before, during breakup number 4. I was working late at the branding agency where I'd been for the past 4 years. The job I'd taken instead of a more prestigious offer in Tokyo, because it was conveniently located in the same building complex as Thoreau's investment firm. My boss, Daphne, stopped by my desk. "I've never seen you this focused," she said, eyeing the pitch deck I was finalizing. "Usually you're practically sprinting out the door by 6. I smiled. "I guess I'm feeling inspired." What I didn't tell her was that my apartment felt empty in a new way. Not the desperate emptiness of missing Thoreau, but the strange emptiness of possibility. I was filling it with work I actually cared about. My phone lit up. "Thoreau, where are you?" The text was simple, direct, entitled. In the past, I would have responded immediately with "I'm so sorry" or "Can we talk?" or "I miss you so much." I would have dropped everything and gone to him. Instead, I set my phone down and continued refining my presentation. An hour later, when I was satisfied with my progress, I finally picked up my phone again. 3 more messages from Thoreau, each more demanding than the last. "I'll be at Onyx at 9, the final one read. Onyx was our special place, the exclusive members-only lounge where we had our first date, where we always reconciled after fights. I glanced at the time. 9:15. "I'm busy tonight," I typed, then put my phone on silent. "You heading out?" Daphne asked as I gathered my things. "Yes, but not to meet Thoreau," I said, the words feeling strange but good on my tongue. "I'm going home to prepare for a job interview." Her eyebrows shot up. "In Singapore? The position you mentioned last year?" I nodded. "It's about time," she said with a knowing smile. "You've outgrown this place." I realized she wasn't just talking about the agency. The Singapore interview was scheduled for the following Friday, and they wanted me there in person. I booked a flight that would give me the weekend to explore the city. As the week progressed, my phone continued to buzz with increasingly frustrated messages from Thoreau. "This isn't how we handle things," he wrote. "You know the drill. You apologize, we talk it out, we move on." I finally responded with a simple, "Not this time." His reply came immediately. "You'll regret this, Valeria." Perhaps the old me would have, but something had shifted. For the first time in years, I was making choices based on what I wanted, not on what would preserve my relationship with Thoreau. "Guess who called me?" Zora said when we met for drinks before my trip. "Thoreau." My stomach tightened. What did he want? "To find out where you're going this weekend. I think he's planning a grand gesture." The old me would have been thrilled. Thoreau fighting for us, showing up unexpectedly, sweeping me off my feet. The romantic movie moment I'd always wanted. "Please tell me you didn't tell him," I said. Zora's grin was wicked. "I told him you were visiting your parents." I laughed, relief washing over me. My parents lived in Arizona, about as far from Singapore as you could get. The morning of my flight, I stood in my closet, staring at my wardrobe. So many of my clothes had been chosen with Thoreau's preferences in mind. The silk blouses he liked, the form-fitting dresses he complimented, the stilettos he thought made my legs look good. I packed a bag full of things I liked, including a crimson jumpsuit I'd bought years ago but never worn because Thoreau said it was trying too hard. As the plane took off, I felt a strange lightness. For the first time in 5 years, I was heading somewhere Thoreau couldn't follow, couldn't influence my decisions, couldn't make me feel small with a disapproving glance. Singapore welcomed me with its characteristic humidity and brilliance. The branding firm was breathtaking, a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the business district with panoramic views of Marina Bay. The team was dynamic, the role more challenging than my current position, and the salary package included housing in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. "Why are you interested in relocating?" the interviewer asked. I had prepared a professional answer about career growth and global experience. Instead, I found myself saying, "I'm ready for a fresh start, a place where I can grow into the person I want to be." As I said it, I realized how true it was. While exploring gardens by the bay after my interview, I found myself sitting at a small open-air cafe overlooking the super trees. The server had just delivered a Singapore sling when my phone rang. "Mom." "Thoreau called us," she said without preamble. "He's worried sick. Said you disappeared for the weekend without telling him where you went. Are you okay?" I took a deep breath. "I'm in Singapore for a job interview." Silence. Then, "But what about Thoreau? What about your life there?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for years. What about Thoreau? Always Thoreau. "Mom, do you remember when I got accepted to that design fellowship in Paris?" I asked. "Right after grad school?" "The one you turned down for Thoreau," she said quietly. "Yes. And do you remember when I was offered that creative director position with the Hong Kong branch 2 years ago? You said Thoreau couldn't relocate because of his investors. And last year, when I wanted to start my own branding consultancy?" "Thoreau thought it was too unpredictable," my mom finished, understanding dawning in her voice. I watched the light display begin to dance across the super trees. For 5 years, every major decision in my life has been made to accommodate Thoreau. And you know what? He's never once done the same for me. I thought about our first breakup, just 3 months into dating. He'd ended things because I'd spent a weekend with Zora at a design retreat instead of attending a charity gala with his financial colleagues. I'd been devastated, calling him repeatedly, showing up at his loft in tears. When he finally took me back, I promised I'd never prioritize anyone else over him again. And I'd kept that promise through 6 more breakups over trivial things: a male photographer who complimented my work after a campaign launch, a family vacation I wanted to take that Thoreau wasn't interested in, a promotion that would require more international travel. Each time, I'd begged for forgiveness, compromised my wants, rearranged my life to fit his expectations. "He's never had to fight for this relationship, Mom," I said, "because I've been doing all the fighting, against myself, against my own needs and dreams." I thought about the pattern we'd established. Thoreau would get upset about something minor, break up with me dramatically, then wait for me to come crawling back. I would do anything to fix things, cancel plans, turn down opportunities, change myself. After a suitable period of punishment, he would graciously take me back, and I'd feel grateful, relieved, until the next time. "I didn't realize," Mom said softly. "You always seemed so happy together." "I was happy to have him," I admitted, "but I wasn't happy with who I became to keep him." I returned home with a job offer and a secret sense of possibility. I hadn't accepted yet, they'd given me 2 weeks to decide, but my heart was already in Singapore. I started researching expatriate communities, calculating moving costs, imagining a life where I could reinvent myself completely. Then the challenges began. First came the group text from our mutual friends. "Reunion dinner at Emilio's this Friday. Both of you need to be there. No excuses." I knew what this was, an intervention. Our friends had seen this pattern before. Thoreau and I would break up, I'd be devastated. They'd organize some event where we'd be forced to interact. I'd cave, and the cycle would continue. They meant well, but they were enablers in a toxic pattern. "Sorry, can't make it. Working late," I replied. My phone immediately exploded with private messages. "Thoreau is a mess. Just talk to him," wrote Jade. "Don't be stubborn. You know you'll get back together eventually," texted Mateo. Only Zora defended me. "Leave her alone. She's finally prioritizing herself." Then came my mother's daily calls. "Thoreau stopped by the house when he was in Phoenix for that investment conference," she said during one. "He brought those artisanal chocolates I love from that boutique downtown. He's such a thoughtful man." I bit my tongue to keep from pointing out that in 5 years, he'd never once remembered my birthday without a reminder. Yet he could charm my mother with a box of chocolates. The hardest challenge came a week after my return. I was at my apartment, sorting through belongings, mentally cataloging what to keep and what to donate, when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Thoreau's sister, Vivian. "He's miserable," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "I've never seen him like this." I'd always liked Vivian. She was fierce, independent, took no nonsense from anyone, including her brother. That's what made her visit so disarming. "You're the best thing that ever happened to him," she continued. "He knows he messed up. He wants to fix things." Something inside me hardened. Like all the other times he messed up? When did he ever actually fix anything? Vivian hesitated. "He's different this time. He's scared. You've never walked away before." "Exactly," I said quietly. "I've never walked away. I've always been the one begging to come back." "So now it's his turn?" she asked. "No," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "It's my turn to live my life without constantly worrying about his approval. 5 years is enough." Vivian studied me, her expression unreadable. "You've changed." It wasn't an accusation, but a realization. And she was right. After Vivian left, I poured myself a glass of the Cabernet Thoreau hated and stood in the center of my apartment, really seeing it for the first time in years. Photos of Thoreau and me dominated the walls. The furniture we'd picked out together, though together meant him approving my suggestions. Books on finance and investment that I'd read to have something to talk about with him. Everything in this space was curated to please him or reflect our relationship. I grabbed a box and started taking down photos, not in anger, but with a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't erasing him. I was making room for myself. My phone buzzed. Another text from Thoreau. "Please meet me. We need to talk about our future." Our future. I stared at those words. 2 weeks ago, they would have filled me with desperate hope. Now they just felt presumptuous. I put the phone away without responding. That weekend, while Thoreau was at a conference I knew he couldn't leave, I completely rearranged my apartment. I painted the living room a vibrant terracotta, a color Thoreau had vetoed as too ethnic. I hung abstract art I loved but had stored away because it didn't match his modernist aesthetic. I rearranged the furniture to create a small studio space by the window, something I'd always wanted. When Zora came over to see the transformation, she whistled. "Wow, it finally looks like you live here." "I know," I said, feeling a strange mix of pride and sadness. I don't think I realized until now how much I'd erased myself from my own life. At work, Daphne noticed the change too. "You're different lately," she said as we prepped for a client meeting. "More confident." I surprised her by pitching a bold concept I'd been too afraid to suggest before, afraid it would require late nights, afraid the client might reject it, afraid it would disrupt the careful balance I'd maintained to keep Thoreau happy. The client loved it, and Daphne gave me the lead. "You've been holding out on us," she said, impressed. I thought about that comment as I drove home. I had been holding out, not just at work, but in every area of my life. Dimming my light, tempering my ambitions, softening my personality, all to maintain a relationship that required me to be less than I was. The most telling evidence of my transformation came when I ran into Thoreau's best friend Kai at the farmer's market. He'd always treated me with a kind of condescending affection, as if I were a loyal pet Thoreau kept around. "When are you going to put Thoreau out of his misery?" he asked, blocking my path between the heirloom tomatoes and the artisan bread. This little power play has gone on long enough, don't you think? I looked at him calmly. This isn't a power play, Kai. We broke up. He laughed. Come on, Valeria, we all know how this goes. He breaks up with you, you panic, you win him back. This time he broke up with you, you ignored him, and now he's panicking. Clever move, but it's time to end the game. 6 months ago, I would have stammered an explanation, maybe even cried. Now I simply said, this isn't a game, and our relationship isn't your business. As I walked away, I realized something profound. I no longer cared what Kai or anyone else in Thoreau's circle thought of me. Their approval had been currency in my old life. Now it was worthless. The day I accepted the Singapore job offer, I didn't tell anyone except Zora. I needed time to process the decision, to let it settle in my bones before I had to defend it to everyone else. She suggested we celebrate at a new rooftop lounge downtown, a place neither Thoreau nor any of our mutual friends would think to look for us. The lounge was sleek and contemporary, with panoramic views of the city skyline I'd soon be leaving behind. I wore my crimson jumpsuit, now a symbol of my emerging self. To new beginnings, Zora toasted, clinking her glass against mine. We were halfway through our second round when a woman at the next table leaned over. That jumpsuit is incredible, she said. That color is stunning with your complexion. Her name was Indigo, and she worked in creative direction at a tech startup across town. She was confident, quick-witted, and laughed with her whole body. She joined our table, and soon we were deep in conversation about everything from brand evolution to global travel. I just got back from 6 months in Kyoto, she said. Best decision I ever made. My fiancé at the time thought I was insane to go alone, said it would destroy our engagement. She grinned. He was right about one thing. It did end our relationship, but it also changed my life. Her words hit me like a revelation. Here was someone who had chosen herself, chosen adventure and growth over a limiting relationship, and emerged radiant. I'm moving to Singapore, I blurted out, for a job and to get away from my ex. Indigo high-fived me. Hell yes, that's the spirit. New country, new you. By the end of the night, I had Indigo's contact information and a promise to meet up again before I left town. More importantly, I had met someone who embodied the freedom I was just beginning to taste. The next supportive element came from an unexpected source. I'd been dreading telling my boss about my decision to leave, but when I finally did, Daphne surprised me. I knew this day would come, she said. You've outgrown us, Valeria. You've been ready for more for a long time. You're not angry? I asked, surprised. Disappointed to lose you, yes. Angry? No. She leaned back in her chair. Can I tell you something? When I was about your age, I was engaged to a venture capitalist who wanted me to give up my career after we married. I almost did it. That's how much I thought I loved him. I'd never heard this story before. Daphne was a powerhouse, a woman who had built her own agency from scratch. I couldn't imagine her giving that up for anyone. What happened? I asked. My mentor saw what was happening. She offered me a position in Berlin, a huge step up, an opportunity I couldn't refuse. My fiancé gave me an ultimatum, him or the job. Her eyes gleamed. I chose the job, moved to Berlin, and never looked back. Best decision I ever made. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set us free. I'm proud of you, Valeria. Her words were a balm, a validation I hadn't known I needed. For the first time, I felt I wasn't just running away from Thoreau, but running toward a better version of myself. 2 days before my planned move to Singapore, Thoreau showed up at my door. I had been expecting it. He had always had a flair for dramatic timing. What I hadn't expected was how different he would look. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his designer stubble now an actual beard, his eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. You're really leaving, he said, his voice cracking. Not a question, a realization. I stepped back to let him in, conscious of the changes I'd made to the apartment. My apartment now, not an extension of him. He noticed too. his eyes scanning the new color on the walls, the rearranged furniture, the boxes packed and labeled for the international movers. "You can't just throw away 5 years," he said, turning to face me. "Not without giving us a chance to fix things." "Fix things?" I echoed. "Thoreau, in 5 years, what have you ever fixed? When have you ever compromised for me the way I constantly compromised for you?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. "I know I've made mistakes. I took you for granted. But I love you, Valeria. I've always loved you." "Then why did you keep breaking up with me?" I asked, the question I'd never dared voice before. "If you loved me, why did you repeatedly push me away, knowing how much it hurt me, only to take me back when I begged?" He looked genuinely confused. They weren't real breakups. They were, I don't know, resets. Ways to fix problems in our relationship. By making me desperate to keep you? By training me to accept all blame, to change myself to avoid losing you again? I felt surprisingly calm, detached even, as if I were analyzing a case study rather than my own life. "It wasn't like that," he insisted. "It was exactly like that. And it worked for a long time, until that last breakup, when something finally clicked for me." I took a deep breath. "Thoreau, do you have any idea who I am? What I want from life? What my dreams are?" His silence was answer enough. "I wanted to open my own branding consultancy," I said quietly. "I had a business plan, potential investors. I showed you, and you said it was impractical, so I gave it up. I was offered a position in Hong Kong, a dream opportunity. You said long distance wouldn't work, so I declined. I wanted to adopt a rescue cat from the shelter, but you said it would trigger your allergies, so I didn't. Every dream, every preference, every part of myself that didn't fit your vision of our life together, I cut away, piece by piece." "Valeria, and the worst part?" I continued, unable to stop now that the floodgates had opened. "The worst part is, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought that's what love was. Sacrificing yourself for the other person. But you never sacrificed anything for me, did you?" He stood there, stunned into silence by truths he'd never had to face before. In that moment, looking at him, I felt neither anger nor love, just a profound sadness for the years I'd lost trying to be someone I wasn't for a man who never appreciated the sacrifice. "I'll move to Singapore with you." Thoreau's words hung in the air between us, unexpected and disarming. I had been prepared for anger, for manipulation, for the silent treatment that usually preceded our reconciliations. I hadn't prepared for this. The one thing I'd always wanted from him, a willingness to put me first. "What?" I managed, sure I'd misheard. "I'll come with you to Singapore," he repeated, taking a step toward me. "I've been talking to investment firms there. There's one that's interested in bringing me on. We can start over. Together." I felt a strange vertigo, as if the ground beneath me had suddenly shifted. This was the fantasy I'd harbored for years. Thoreau choosing me, choosing our relationship over his own convenience. How many times had I imagined it? How many tears had I shed wishing he would make exactly this kind of grand gesture? "I know I've been selfish," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I know I've hurt you. But Valeria, these past weeks without you have been hell. I can't eat, can't sleep. Nothing matters without you." He took my hands in his, and I didn't pull away. "I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm willing to prove it, to leave everything behind and follow you to Singapore, to build a new life where you're the priority." His eyes were wet with tears, his expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. This was Thoreau stripped of his usual armor. Thoreau truly afraid of losing me. It was everything I had once longed for. "We can find a place near your new office," he continued. "Maybe that luxury high-rise overlooking Marina Bay that you showed me in those brochures. I'll handle all the relocation arrangements. You won't have to worry about a thing." The vision he painted was seductive. Us in Singapore, building a new life together as equals this time. No more sacrificing my dreams for his convenience. No more walking on eggshells. We can get that rescue cat you always wanted, he added softly. And I knew then that he'd been listening to my earlier words, that he was offering me everything I'd said I'd given up. For a brief, dizzying moment, I wavered. The familiar pull of his presence, the comfort of not facing a new country alone, the validation of finally being chosen by the man I'd spent years trying to please. It was almost overwhelming. He must have sensed my hesitation because he pulled me closer, his familiar cologne enveloping me. Say yes, Valeria. Let me make this right. Let me show you how much I love you. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 5 years pressing down on me. How easy it would be to say yes, to slide back into the comfort of the known, to believe that this time would be different. After all, wasn't this what I had always wanted? For Thoreau to fight for me the way I had always fought for him? A small voice inside me whispered a warning. People don't change overnight. The patterns were too deeply ingrained, the power imbalance too fundamental to our relationship. But another part of me, the part that had loved him for 5 years, wanted desperately to believe. I pulled away from Thoreau's embrace, creating space between us. The decision crystallizing in my mind surprised me with its clarity. No, I said softly but firmly. He blinked, as if he couldn't quite process the word. No? What do you mean, no? Valeria, I'm offering to give up everything to be with you. That's just it, Thoreau. You see it as giving up everything, as this enormous sacrifice you'd be making for me. But it shouldn't be that way. My dreams, my career, my choices shouldn't be a sacrifice for you. They should matter to you because they matter to me. His expression hardened slightly. So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just walking away? I'm not just walking away, I said. I'm choosing myself, maybe for the first time in my adult life. What about what we had? What about love? His voice rose with frustration. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Love shouldn't diminish you, Thoreau. It shouldn't require you to become smaller, to constantly accommodate the other person without reciprocation. That's not love. That's surrender. You're being dramatic, he scoffed. We were happy. Were we? I asked quietly. Or was I just so afraid of losing you that I confused relief with happiness? Every time we got back together after a breakup, I wasn't happy. I was relieved. Relieved that I'd managed to hold on to you for a little longer, until the next time you decided I wasn't enough. That's not fair, he protested. No, it wasn't fair. None of it was fair. And I let it happen because I thought loving someone meant accepting whatever scraps of affection they were willing to give you. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd soon be leaving behind. I need to find out who I am without you, Thoreau. I need to discover the woman I buried trying to be the perfect girlfriend for you. So this is it? 5 years and you're just done? I turned back to him, feeling strangely calm. Yes, I'm done apologizing for taking up space in this world. I'm done shrinking myself to avoid upsetting you. I'm done begging for love that should be freely given. He stared at me for a long moment, disbelief giving way to anger. You'll regret this, he said, his voice cold. You'll realize what you threw away, and by then it'll be too late. A few months ago, those words would have terrified me. Now they just confirmed I was making the right choice. Goodbye, Thoreau, I said, opening the door. He hesitated, clearly expecting me to change my mind at the last minute, to crumble, to beg him to stay, to fall back into our familiar pattern. When I didn't, he stormed out without another word. As I closed the door behind him, I felt neither triumph nor grief, but something quieter and more profound, the peace of finally standing my ground, of honoring the woman I was becoming rather than clinging to a relationship that had required me to be less than I was. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my Singapore apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and violet. Marina Bay Sands glittered in the distance, a landmark that had once seemed as foreign to me as the concept of putting myself first. My phone buzzed with a text from Zora, who was coming to visit next month. Kai mentioned he saw Thoreau with that hedge fund manager from London. Thought you should know. I smiled. realizing that the news didn't affect me at all. There was a time when it would have devastated me, when I would have spent hours analyzing what she had that I didn't, how I could win him back. Now it was just information, as neutral as a weather report. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "Hope he's happy." And I meant it. My new apartment was smaller than my old one, but it was completely mine. Decorated with bold colors and patterns Thoreau would have hated, filled with books on design and creativity that I actually enjoyed reading. Wall space dedicated to local art I'd discovered rather than photos of a relationship that had slowly eroded my sense of self. The job was challenging in the best way. I was learning, growing, contributing ideas that were valued. My colleagues were brilliant and supportive, and my director had already hinted at a leadership role after I successfully launched a major campaign for an international client. I'd made friends too, not just work acquaintances, but people who knew me as I was now, not as Thoreau's girlfriend, or as the woman who was always apologizing for having opinions or dreams of her own. We explored hidden hawker centers on weekends, attended cultural festivals, discovered secret rooftop gardens. I'd even adopted a rescued Siamese cat with striking blue eyes that reminded me of nothing and no one but herself. My phone rang, Daphne, checking in as she did every few weeks. "How's our international woman of mystery these days?" she asked when I picked up. "Thriving," I said, smiling. "I just submitted my business proposal to the innovation incubator here." "The branding consultancy you've been dreaming about since I met you? Oh, Valeria, that's fantastic." "It's just part-time initially, evenings and weekends," I said. "But if it's accepted, I might actually revive that full business plan." "Your own global brand studio," Daphne mused. "I always knew you had it in you." After we hung up, I sat with my cat curled beside me, sipping jasmine tea and watching the lights of Singapore come alive as darkness descended. I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago, desperate for Thoreau's approval, willing to sacrifice anything to keep him, convinced that his love was the measure of my worth. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, someone who made choices based on her own desires and values, who recognized her own strength, who understood that real love doesn't demand self-erasure but encourages growth and authenticity. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still nights when I felt lonely, moments when I questioned my decisions. But those doubts no longer had the power to paralyze me or send me running back to the familiar comfort of a relationship that required me to be less than I was. I had walked away from Thoreau that day, yes, but more importantly, I had walked toward myself, toward the woman I was always meant to be, the woman who had been waiting patiently for me to find the courage to choose her. And that, I realized as I watched the first stars appear in the Singapore sky, was the most significant relationship I would ever have. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Have you ever walked away from something that wasn't serving you anymore? Share your experience in the comments below. Until next time.